Hello everyone, let's see if this is going to work. Hello, right then, let's see if this works better. I think this might work better. I think this might work better. How are you all doing? As you can see, I have a roaring fake fire behind me. Fucking milk. The only way one should drink one of these things is from a champagne glass. When everyone else around you a champagne glass. When everyone else around you is having champagne. And don't worry, I have a fair number of cans of this to keep me going. The family's not live on stream. Family are all busy doing family. The assistant fluffy research assistant barking. The fluffy research assistant was next to me going ha ha ha. And that's because to be fair, I was on the side of the Yes, he was. Happy New Year to everyone. I think that's in case I've forgotten. Fun in well, actually no. Pretty much all the videos, but yeah, they're all pretty much done. Could you bring up a picture called? If it is, I'll find it and bring it up. Sorry, too much food. Admiral Henderson, easy one about the decision not to go dual purpose for the 4.7. His few serious where I can't. Tanef, Seneca. That's why I need to get Google working. Okay, I wonder if that will be better. Let's see if that's better. Oh, there's still a lot of lag going on. It's telling me I've got excellent connection. This is the thing I find strange. I'm over the Wi-Fi here. Ooh. I have a plan. Working out better. That's a lot better. It's still got the. Because if this works, then I will maneuver. It appears to be working for me. Appears to still be circling. Ooh, where are we? Ooh. If I stick you right up next to the window, does that work better? No. Hang on. Check this out showing. It's working, but it's being weird. It's working, but stuttering. Wait a few minutes before changing something. Yeah. Oh. By God. Oh. Was working, then circles again. Okay, Albazaski. Get some. Loom seems okay. Well, that's good. If it seems okay. Getting smooth 720. 10 seconds of no buffer. That's good. Alright. Let me grab my laptop so I can actually get the chat. Let's the circle dome come back now. Ay, caramba. Hello, third or fourth time you joined the stream. Well, hopefully that works. I don't know. Not an avian carrier, but I am streaming over something fine. Hello, right then. No. Floss been banned from the hot tub from tonight. And no objection. What motion was that? Any objections? There are many objections. Yes. The motion the chaining you to my shed, yes, that won't work, unfortunately. I don't know. Ay, caramba. How are we all doing tonight? How are we all doing? I'm going to get things looking slightly better in a second. So what I'm going to do is move you all to there. So I can look at you and go, hello, how are you all doing? Yes, I have some interesting things behind me. Now, I can, well, at least now I can have full screen of the questions. So, hopefully you can all hear me, see me, and hello, and I can answer the questions now. No, there's no hot tub tonight. It's rather sad. No hot tub. No. No. To be fair, there are people other than me who would like the hot tub. So low res, by the way, because you are currently streaming from the phone directly. Seneca, what would be your dream Falklands War live stream? Which guess? Michael Clarke, Julian Thompson, non-alcoholic. Probably Jeremy Larkin, especially if we can get him to bring his slides. Because Jeremy Larkin has some absolutely fantastic slides and pictures he took down there, because he's a bit of an amateur photographer. And he was taking all sorts of things while he was down there. And let's put it this way, the captain the captain of one of the LPDs / Michael's chief of staff kind of war zone. Right then. Maybe an Argentine commander? Honestly, the trouble is the ones of those I actually like are all dead. There isn't one of the current ones who are still alive who I'd really want to have a sit-down chat on a live with, because they fall into two groups. The ones who are, we should never have been there, should never have been there, should never have been there, should never have been who basically start things like Britain managing to make an aircraft carrier for somewhere. You sit there and go, there is none of the, unfortunately, the really good ones are still around, it seems. Not as far as I know. There again, we do have, please note, it's not just on the Argentine side that there are some really strange commanders and people who were down there who have some really strange ideas about what was going on down in the Falklands. See, Clarke asks, Washington Naval Treaty what? Yes, had to change. Well, let's put it this way. It depends how many years later. Years enough later that the M3s are completed? Because if the M3s are in service, then you suddenly have an 18-inch gun, brand new battleship serving the Royal Navy. And the Royal Navy ain't going to get rid of those. And suddenly everyone's going to want 18-inch ships. So, yeah. You've basically managed to make the 14-inch unlikely to turn up again, and you've managed to make the entire American standard battle line look kind of weak. So yes, there'll probably be a whole lot of issues if they try and do that. If that generation of ships being built, there would have been a lot of problems. That's the thing. You have a very short period of time where the Washington Naval Treaty can actually take place and succeed, and it happens in that period. And if it hadn't happened in that period, it would have happened. Oh, we do. We have many, many fun things going on. I'm hoping you. Yeah. Karen. Sorry. It's not true. It's just I don't think you want everyone else hearing. I love my sister. She will never remember when I'm on a live. Oh. Matchlights, watching a Tickeronga video say, I'd say that the top speed for the Spruance class is another USN work of fiction. Oh yes, let's put this way, most of the current ships are a work of fiction, and I know that. But I also know if I use the figures which are on Wikipedia, none of my friends can get in trouble. Let's put it this way, before Christmas, I was having a chat with a member of one of the US naval attaches to the UK, and well, former US naval attaché to the UK, who I know really quite well. Well, the thing is, I also know the way the American system works, and if I'd talked about some of the stats, which you know if you go to Chatham, etc., and if you talk at Chatham House, and if you talk with anyone, you have a rough idea. If I'd talked about that sort of level of stuff, it could have got him or one of my other friends in trouble. So I don't do that. I talk about the context and nuance. But facts-wise, if I'm going to quote any facts or stats, it's got to be stuff which is already out there on Wikipedia, so no one can claim I got it from anywhere else. No one can go, oh, this person's been talking out of school. Because I do it for my friends. That is also, I have to admit, that's one of the reasons why Drac and others don't like doing current affairs, because it's a very fine line to walk. And having to admit that you're having to check Wikipedia, because those are the stats you're allowed to say, doesn't ring people with an endorsement of what kind of quality information you're providing. And I'm going, well, look, there is this reason. I explained the reason why. This is the thing that we learn in war studies. You explain the reason why I'm using these figures, because these are the publicly available figures. And I say they are publicly available because they're the figures given on Wikipedia. All right. Let's agree with it. If the British Empire had signed a START treaty at the Free Power Cold War, what do you expect they would have given up? As we know, the US and USSR would give up, well, lots of stuff, but the UK would probably have given up some stuff as well, equivalent technologies. That's what the British would have had, because the British would have had to have had equivalent technologies if they'd been in that situation. If you want the exact facts on the current US ships, ask the Chinese and Russians. No. Trust me, they don't get the current facts, because in the nicest way, there's a very clever way of making sure that the current facts of any ships don't get out. That's by just not telling anyone, even yourself, current facts. And that's what they tell anyone, facts. Audio dropping off. Well, I hope the audio is coming over the phone system, so it should be okay. It should all be going okay, but, you know, lots of packet loss. The phone is hooked into both the Wi-Fi and 5G, so it should be okay. He says, should be, crossing fingers. Russian Neil question 2. If the UK and US and Japan are willing to continue potential source of a major consideration, i.e. if those two have another naval race. This is the thing. The Washington Naval Treaty realizes that there are more people involved in the naval race than Britain and Germany. That is the starting point. The Anglo-German naval race was not the be-all and end-all of the dreadnought naval race. The fact is there was America involved, Italy involved, there was France involved off to one side, Russia involved off to one side, South America was actually a major part of it, and Japan was a big part. Cannot, therefore, even if you have just got the big ones in, because the big ones, why are they building the ships? To defend against the others, which includes a combination of little ones. Because let's put it this way, France is really good allies with Britain at this point. If France can build whatever battleships they like, and can build them, then can America and Japan really trust that Britain is being kept to heel when Britain always has a 4th and 5th squadron, let's say, of Frenchies, who may or may not have a very strange and very bad French accent. Perhaps France sets up the French Foreign Squadron to back up the French Foreign Legion, and the Foreign Squadron just happens to all be l'Anglais. There's many ways you can get around it in that situation. How's the channel done this year? It's done quite well. I got some stats. Diddly. So, oh, good lord, that's a fun-looking image of me. Oh, that looks great. Yeah, that's gonna be that. I'm gonna change that image. Right then. So the channel so far, well, we've passed 1 million views as of roughly 13 days ago. 1 million people have watched videos on this channel. Let's see what else. We're up to 9,427 subscribers. So we are 573 short of the 10,000. Let's see anything else. Yeah, we are 5,500 hours short of 400,000 watch time. 400,000 hours of watch time. So that's pretty cool. And yeah, it's chugging along quite well. It's interesting. I am now the audience figures I still find quite fun. I do always consistently better amongst returning viewers than new viewers, but I do get some occasional peaks of new viewers, which seem to come in with the shorts lately. They seem to be good at attracting new viewers. So far, only, well, 12.9% of all my subscribers have turned on all notification channel. Apparently you need to enable both. And watch time, well, 74% of the people who watch, percent of the time spent watching my channel is by people who subscribed. And apparently I'm now at 0.6% of my lifetime viewers were female. However, YouTube have a policy that anyone engineering almost automatically. That might skew some of the stats. Just a tad. Just a tad. Carlos, why didn't the Japanese ever try to take Green Island, so Midway? Green Island is about 60 miles from Midway, and it's big enough for an airfield. Probably because, honestly, they just get target fixation. The Japanese have some of the best planning and some of the worst planning in that they will have these sessions with these young officers who will do completely off-the-wall thinking and planning, come up with some really cool ideas. And then you'll have older officers who have got very fixed ideas about how they're going to win it. And they go and win it. And they go and focus on it, focus on that. And they ignore everything else. Chocolate milk and a champagne flute, of course. Andrew, would it be possible for the Iron to grandfather in the 8 surviving armoured cruisers and distribute them to the Imperial Navies under Washington Treaty? If so, would this require some other provisions under Washington Treaty, or would the Iron cite the other navies retaining their armoured cruisers? Would cite the other navies retaining their armoured cruisers, and theoretically could if they wanted them. The thing is, if they wanted them. So, Thompson, given the supply of missiles running out, would we be seeing a return to ram launchers and more guns instead of VLS and next round refits? I doubt you might get more of them, but I don't think it'll be instead of VLS, it'll be as well as VLS. If that's sensible. Mr. Friendly's End, you can choose a class of 4 12-inch capital ships to be built for the Italian Navy pre-World War I. These will be the only ships going into World War II. What would the class look like? Five triple 12-inch turrets, 28 plus knots. Probably try and have turreted 6-inch guns. Or should I just go for a general purpose 5-inch, try and make a dual buy? They got a good 4-inch AA gun. That's the trouble. So they've got a good dual for 100 and something millimeter that they use for AA. So I want to still use that. So I'll probably go with that in a 6-inch. And yeah, 5 triple 12-inch turrets. Basically enough firepower to blast most things out of the water. People get upset at you having to check what the publicly available percentage are to make sure you don't reveal something you totally do not know. Yeah, people get upset with us on various things. Only. Let's see if that works. That makes everyone happy. It's still giving me good stats and still giving me good figures. And it seems to have gone up a bit. So we'll see. That's right. In the Hearts of Iron Against All Odds, the Royal Navy gets 10 British TCO equivalents. They are 10,752 tons and fully loaded and come with 2 6-inch 52 caliber guns, 132 VLS cells. Is that doable, the whole of 560?
So it would draft for 34 feet. I'd say they probably need to be a little bit longer. A little bit longer would probably help that one. A little bit longer. Dan Freeman, publicly acknowledged minimums. Then you get the HMS Renown with Darren Hampton in command and a German prestige unit hunt down. And off you go, Zip, overtaking the Abdeel class. That's a scenario which I could actually see. Honestly, with HMS Renown, it's like, I think there was an interesting conversation, video with Drac today in his Sunday video. And I was listening to the question on the Queen Elizabeth and whether they could take the triple turrets or not. And I was mentally thinking, well, yes, but if I'm putting a 15-inch 50s and I'm upgrading them to triple turrets, then there's part which goes, right, then I will take off one turret, I'll give them only 3 turrets, and I use that extra space for, A, reducing the top weight. So let's say if I take off X, that reduces top weight quite nicely, thank you very much. And B, I can use the extra ammunition storage space to make sure I'm still carrying enough shells. And because let's be honest, that goes from 8 guns to 9 guns. Yes, the shells are still not going to be the same amount, but there's going to be a closer than if it's 8 to 12. And I can use the weight saved from the turret mechanism and the turret going and all those things to probably give myself a boost in power to get them up to 28 knots. So yeah, triple turrets on the Queen Elizabeth class, thank you very much. Jocelyn, would it be only line to say that the Anglo-German naval race gets the spotlight because of the hindsight of World War II? Yes. There's Christopher Lee on secrecy. Mr. Lee, did you know it worked with SOE in World War II? Yeah, Lee, can you keep a secret? Innovate. Yes, I can. Christopher Lee, so can I. It works. So, given what you said about them not being an escort to do the Yemen run of a carrier, I thought the LCS were false enough for that, and partly why the USN is keeping them around. No, an LCS could not keep up with a carrier in full trot. A nuclear carrier in full trot. No, an LCS in theory can keep up somewhere, but no, and besides, it's not much of a defense even if it does. Russian Naval Treaty. If the Japanese had completed number 13 class by some miracle, how good were its proposed 18-inch guns? Were these guns effectively forerunner the 18.1 on the Yamato class? They're certainly starting down that road, but when I say forerunner, we mean great-grandfather more than father or mother. So, in terms of guns. So we're talking about something which is quite a long way down on the predecessor list. Hello, Mrs. Rearsback. Hope you're both well and having a nice Christmas. You disable Wi-Fi on your phone. I have disabled it. Dan Freeman, Ian. I know enough to leave playing with the pressurized steam and to other people. I'm more the carry-on chief role, possibly having yet hypothetically outline limits of what I'll cover for. Also, having seen you and your handling of a stoker, you need to learn some people skills when it comes to stokers. For example, do not put sticky tape or signs up on any stoker's boiler. It will upset them, and they will chase you, and turn out to be surprisingly agile, going through various positions to track you down. Good lord. Sorry. I think I got something on my nose. So, not watching the Naval Treaty question. Have you played Watermaster General board game? Yes, what do you think about it? I think my friend Dan had brought a copy of that to me at one point, and it was fun, but I only got to play it for one evening on a Justin Craig course. I'll bring up the picture once I'm sure everything's working. I don't think actually I can bring up the picture on this. Sorry, I'm broadcasting over the phone. I don't think I can bring up a picture on it. Right, so let's see. When you believe the 8-inch gun is no longer a viable weapon, Drac mentions how radar and 5-inch 54 cal guns on midway class replace such a weapon. I would say you could have had the 8-inch gun longer than that, but it's a case of when is it paying off enough for a carrier? Does an 8-inch gun versus a 5-inch 54 with radar guidance, which one offers you the bigger payoff? If you're talking for a cruiser or other ship today, I'd say an 8-inch gun could still be very useful. I'd like to have some 8-inch guns. In fact, having 8-inch guns would be something I would quite enjoy, having the problem of working out what to do with them. Jack Ryan, non-public stats. I think there have been 3 or 4 sentences of tankers of different nations getting in trouble by posting real manuals and stats on forums for tank games. Oh, yeah. Andrew Paul, regarding HMS Swift's planning scuttling for the proposed second raid on Ostend, was it because she was the only RN ship with 10-inch guns, or were pre-dreadnoughts really that expendable by then? Pre-dreadnoughts were really that expendable by then. 9681. Out of 1942 for UK, 1946 for the IGN, and 1948 for the German. Whose idea for guess for the start of World War II would have been the correct one had it not started in 39? Oh, honestly, I'd be surprised it made it to the 1942 of the UK's plan. Honestly, if you consider in 1937, 38, 39, every single January involves a absolute standoff pointing guns at each other between the Royal Navy and the Japanese Navy. I do not see that going much past 1942. And if the Germans really didn't get it, I think if the Germans decided to get involved in the war after 1942, especially one which had already started, in the case of Britain versus Japan, etc., and remember, as I've said before, it will be an alliance of Britain and it'll be an alliance of Britain and America versus Japan plus friends. That's not a scenario good for the Germans or good for the Axis powers, because suddenly their whole thing is, as long as everyone's divided, they have a chance. If they're dealing with a united force which is already fighting, and they decide, you know what, we're going to do? We're going to get involved in this war. We're going to attack the Brits and we're going to attack the Brits, or we're going to attack the French, or we're going to attack the Poles, because the Poles are quite smart, and they would know that if they want to guarantee their safety and security when they've got Russia and Germany looking at them nastily, send a couple of destroyers to join the Allies fighting the Japanese in the Pacific. They're not needed. They're not a major force. They're not going to be helpful in terms of numbers, but no one's going to turn down some extra destroyers, and it's always nice to have extra destroyers. And once they're there, well, they're part of the alliance. And then if Germany gets stupid enough to evade them or attack them or threaten them in any way, shape or form, it's a case of America, Britain and France turning around to Germany and going, you really want to play this? We're already involved in one war. We will wreck you. And the Poles are definitely sneaky enough to do that one. Mm-hmm. I'm saying, weren't the nuclear-powered cruisers, with the exception of Virginia-class CGN, getting to their own lives? No, they could all have made it well into their 40s, probably. They were well-built ships, mostly. Yes, they were destroyer leaders, but Long Island especially had years left in her. You have to remember, what usually wears out fastest is not the hull, it's the engines. And the part of the engine that wears out on the hull is the boilers. Nuclear reactors. They wear out, they are built differently. They wear out differently as well. Hello, Dagdom12. I can understand why the US Navy is calling something, would be calling something Fallujah. I hadn't seen the news myself about that. I am not surprised it causes controversy, but that's the nature of these things. Especially when you start to use recent battles for it. Sorry, this is about my 18th can today. They're good. Here's Muscle China. Stalin's goal: get France, UK, and Germany to kill each other and then attack. That possibly was Stalin's goal, but let's be honest, Stalin wasn't actually that good at international relations. This was the guy who invaded Finland, remember, because it was going to be easy. Senator, you are Britain in 1918 and you're given 2 dry docks with the ability to comfortably hold 4 hoods in 2x2 configuration. How does that change World War II? If I've got the space to repair and maintain 8 hoods, well, in the nicest way, if I've got 2 dry docks that big, I can build pretty much whatever I want to build. That would be a truly colossal dry dock. Secondly, if it's 1918 and I've got that, then honestly, if I was in 1918, I'd be be rushing the G3s along, and B, be rushing, converting hoods, the remaining admirals, into carriers. My plan would be to get a fast squadron of 3 fast carriers, large fast carriers, and at least 6, preferably 7 or 8, i.e. a full battle squadron level of capital ships that are fast for dealing with international issues. That'd be my plan anyway. For example, let's see, what navies has Russia got into naval arms race with? They managed to get into them with Germany, with France, with Sweden, and Japan. They were ordering dreadnoughts, and they were trying to upgrade them and order more. And you see that it's a factor. That's a factor then in the Turkish, because basically the Russians are ordering. Let's go through this, right? The Russians order dreadnoughts. They're building dreadnoughts. So the Ottomans want dreadnoughts because the Russians have them, and the Russians and the Ottomans, or the Russians and the Turks after World War I, don't like each other. They have a long history of fighting over bits of their territory. And that means the Greeks want to get them because they can't allow the Ottomans to have that much firepower and then not have the equivalent firepower. So that means the Greeks are getting, which means the Ottomans now need more because the Ottomans are now worried about the Turks and about the Ottomans are now worried about the Russians and the Greeks. And that means the Russians need more because that means because the Ottomans are going to have more and the Russians can't have less than the Ottomans in the Black Sea. And there you go, you have a naval race taking off. No, 6040, what's this about sticky fingers on boilers? Talk to Dan. Talk to Dan. Stafford tried his best to restrain him, but Stafford is just a kind soul. Thank you, Jack Ray. Thank you, everyone. The reason 6-inch guns on modern ships. I guess there are since no true anymore. Dual-purpose 6-inch guns. One have to at least have an auto 76mm next to it. You could build a dual-purpose 6-inch gun these days. You could build one. It's not beyond the scope of your technological capabilities. Not by a long shot. Reparator, Dr. Clarke, is Chief O'Brien a highly placed member of the Adeptus Mechanicus? Look, Chief O'Brien would be the supreme leader of the Adeptus Mechanicus. He wouldn't even be given the title of general or anything like that. He would just be a case of there is the Omnisire and there is Omnisar, then there is Chief O'Brien. So go Omnisar, O'Brien, and then everyone else. You can see the reason why there wouldn't be any sort of one else above him is no one else could attain the rank of being an O'Brien. So he would be above them all. Michael Cooch, what were the differences between World War II, US and IGN carrier doctrines, and how did the respective doctrines change during war? They weren't as dissimilar as American British or Japanese British doctrines were, but they were still dissimilar in that the biggest thing comes to do with force generation and pilot generation, and that's the big problem for the Japanese by the time so the biggest difference between generation of how you train and equip your pilots. There it is. Was it the captain getting killed or damage that she took that stopped the HMS Amethyst going further up the Yangtze River? Damage she took and getting grounded. Now, sorry, what is the likelihood that the British Ticonderoga would use the Type 42 bridge, and then 18,000-ton British EG would use stuff from the Type 45s? Yes to the latter, no to the former, because the reason why it wouldn't use the Type 42 bridge is it would have to be adapted to use the radar system. Well, you've got to use the Aegis system for a TCO to work. So if you're using that Aegis system, then you need the SBY radars, which means you need some sort of structure to mount those radars on. It is 1901 recipe iron brew. I will try and discuss it without bringing it up. Wait till I catch up the questions. I'm not that far behind. At least I hope not. I don't think I'm that far behind. I think I'm about 10 minutes behind you on the questions. Mr. Serentian, if you were in charge of the US Navy before they entered into World War One, would you have slowed their battleship program to build more cruisers? And if so, when would you start? I wouldn't not to build more cruisers, but I would have probably started building battle cruisers. Because honestly, if I'm looking at the Pacific, I'm looking at a maneuver war wherever I'm talking about it. The Atlantic has the capacity to turn into a very large North Sea. Because, let's be honest, who are you fighting in the Atlantic? Well, if you're not fighting the British, you're not fighting anyone. Whereas in the Pacific, you're fighting the Japanese. And I need a fleet that can both fix them, and I need a fleet that can both cause them trouble. And I need the scouting forces the Americans themselves work out, so I need to start those battle cruisers earlier. Honey. So I'd been really pushing it on a version of the Lexington class. Earlier, possibly with triple 14-inch turrets if I can get them. So, Clarke, Alex, you mentioned the US LCS earlier, which has a notoriously unreliable power plant. Well, it more is a gearbox issue on both of them, it seems. Is it possible to fix the system cheaply, or would USN correct to scrap the existing hulls? You basically have to rebuild the entire hull and the entire engine. Here it is, by the way. Wife Karen says Happy New Year. Happy New Year. Now, Harness, if a Jutland, the German pre-drought stay home, there ought to be 2 knots increase for the speed for the high sea fleet. Any idea how much longer BT would have been under their fire if Mauve had stayed home? Well, it's not just how much longer they'd have been under fire, the whole thing would have changed. Because if you've got a 2 knots higher speed movement, you're going to be in completely different places when you meet up. Because it's going to add up over hours of movement. So that means they might run into the Grand Fleet still doing high speed instead of in cruising formation. It could be interesting. Sounds fun, Mitchell Oates. Collard greens, black-eyed peas, and cornbread. So when we talk about Hood's machinery being worn out, it's not turbos the problem, it's her boilers that are clapped up. Let's be honest, which of these has more of a problem? Something which just has high pressure steam flowing through it. It can have a corrosive effect, and you can need to replace the blades and replace the turbines. Please don't get me wrong, you can do that. But or the thing which has to be heated, cooled, has constantly got very, very hot temperatures going on inside it, and massively hot steam. Steam far hotter than when it eventually reaches the turbines. Yeah. Boilers, they're basically large kettles, and we all know what happens in those. Potentially, HMS Verdun, potentially. And Nicole Ross, rather than an 8-inch gun, how about single barrel 16-inch auto-loaded? That would take up a lot of space on most modern ships. We don't have ships really big enough to use that. Doc, were nuclear cruisers built easier than subs or earlier carriers to refuel? They were actually easier to refuel, but not because, let's put it this way, not because they're built to be so, but because the fact they're cruisers, so they are so. You must remember, a nuclear reactor in a submarine is inside a pressure hull. A nuclear reactor in a carrier has to be accessed by taking off her deck, going through her hangar spaces, going down through the ship, several layers. A nuclear reactor on a cruiser tends to be not so difficult to approach. So everything becomes a little bit easier. High Sea 180. Mm-hmm. Next question. Could a hull from 1935 to 1940-ish still be usable today? If not frontline, if military, but something like testbed, if yes, which, if not, what would it take? Oh yeah, there's tons of them which could still be being used. You could still be using, depending on how you've worn them, you could still be using some of the bigger ships very easily. Referees look. Clarke, Japan being better served trying to make up the deficiencies after solving the campaign with a properly thought out land-based naval air arm. Given that I can disperse aircraft, train more crew, aircraft, I mean, Japan can't build ships as the US can, but they still run a decent number of planes. It limits you to the defensive. The moment you have any land-based aircraft, you can't move them that easily. Which allows basically them to know where you are, build up and mass and engage you where they wish to. That's right. Why do we know so little about 1944 lines? Because there's quite so much available. It's going to sound strange. We know all the different options they were looking at. We don't know the conversations of which options were likely to actually be chosen. It's the best way to hide information is by hiding in plain sight. Gun 12. Had there not been in the Western Naval Treaty on negotiations broke down, what would have been the outcome for the 20s and 30s? Lots more construction. Probably a real growth in battleship and carrier construction. Especially in the mid-30s. Strawberry, hello. If China's Republic before 1957 could get some submarines built with proper crews trained by the Germans, how problematic would it be for the KHN? Why would they go for the Germans in 1937? The German submarine force in 1937 is terrible. Yes, they have quite good relations with the Germans, but they're mostly focusing on the Japanese by that point, so they wouldn't go the German. And basically, if they got properly trained submarine crews, yes, and properly trained submarines, that could be very problematic for the Japanese. Do I think they need to go to Germans? No, probably the Dutch. As the Poles will back you up with, to go to the Dutch. I think if the war had continued, Britain would have built at least a couple of multi-class. Not sure which version though. Probably the biggest. Dr. Clarke, would the Japanese have been better served by trying to train pilots rather than resort to kamikaze? My instinct is to say yes, because honestly, I do not trust a squidgy organic bit on a suicide mission. But, and I think it's a waste of planes and brave people, but that could be my morality overruling my tactical sense. Perhaps there is a good reason for it. Perhaps. Right, honestly, what CV did the British use to replace Ark Royal with? I think it's got to be one of the illustrious class, isn't it? One of the Invincible. Well, one of the Invincibles. Depends which Ark Royal you're talking about. One he lost in World War II, or the one lost, or the one which was retired in the 60s or 70s. What if Australia and New Zealand could replace their battlecruisers from 1925 to 1931s? Limitations: keep the same gun size, no more than 25% extra displacement and costs. Then they end up with a very, very scary ship. And the Deutschlands have a threat which is going to hunt them down quite viciously. And it's also going to change the British approach to, well, let's be honest, Tiger probably then gets kept instead of one of the R's. And probably upgraded instead of one of the R's, so it probably ends up with 14-inch guns. I also have a feeling that if that was the case, Australia and New Zealand might find they suddenly had better, and I mean a lot better, battle cruisers assigned to them than they did when the treaties were technically being negotiated. Michael, Chief O'Brien versus Montgomery Scott. Who would you prefer as your chief engineer and why? Why do I have to pick? Because one's an officer and the other's an NCO. So can't I have them both working together? Then my ship would be unstoppable. Alfred B228, if the first two of the Alaska class were somehow ready when the war started, would they be used as cruisers or as fast battleships until the fast battleships came online? Will they be indistinguishable from those two roles? In that, they'd probably be the fast escort for the carrier battle groups. And in fact, it's going to sound strange. So, let's say you ended up with HMS Victorious deploying as USS Robin again. All right? The British would probably not want it to be outmatched in terms of escort capability, so you might well have Renown sent with, because she could be got ready at that time, theoretically, to go with Victorious. And you would probably find one of the Alaskas escorting Saratoga. Be a fun time. Hi, Danny, alright? So you got, Alex, did the RN have problems with the various Allied engineers who used to work in metric, like getting along sort of confused in the US and US Imperial, and the US using Imperial units? Not really. Most people managed to do the conversions of their head. The biggest problems were actually between US Imperial and British Imperial. In fact, those were different, because both looked exactly like Imperial. And both were Imperial, but they were adapted Imperial. Let's see, how ridiculous is the Battle of Casablanca? There are more ridiculous battles in history. Enjoyed your Soviet Navy videos. Thank you, Danny. If a war started in the 1950s, what Western cruisers could have gone out one-on-one instead of? The mine would be a sure thing. Belfast, Cleveland? I would not want to take any of the 6-inch cruisers really against them. I'm sure the British had an idea of it, but in the nicest way, that's what you had kept things like Vanguard, etc. around for. Activate them and send them out to hunt the Sverdlovs down. That's right, Ford class isn't exactly a smashing success either so far. Ford class are actually not that bad. This is one of those problems. People, they put in a whole load of new technology in them. And this is sort of what happened with the Zumwalts. But with the Fords, thankfully, they haven't been able to do what they did with the Zumwalts. In that they've put a whole load of new technology and expect it all to work. And the trouble is, if you change not just one piece, but 2 pieces, 3 pieces, 4 pieces, 5 pieces of essential technology, then it's going to take a while to work out the problems of it, because you have no basis for how that technology should be interacting with things, or does interact with things. Some lucky China submarines can make some problems for the IJN. ASW's never spoke first to them, but after one or two prestigious losses, IJN could go seriously for ASW training. It could do, but the point is, honestly, one of the things that you cannot forget is that some of the canals in China are just so big and deep and massive that whilst the Japanese might have controlled the ports, the Chinese could still have a submarine force going. And the problem is going to be getting those submarines out to sea. Well, again, that's quite possible. The sheer amount of traffic going up and over those canals, which the Japanese didn't like to interrupt because they wanted to tax it, so that's going to limit them. It really is. If Panama had still been a Scottish colony at the Union, do you see the UK building a large sea canal, or the RN putting the kibosh on it to keep the US fleet separated and not give them an invasion target? Oh. For the British, you'd want to still build it because the trade scenario options it would give you would be far outweigh the US having the strategic alliance linking they would have. And also there's the fact that you could quite easily design it so that it would not be easy to be taken, and if you did take it, you would not have access to it for long. I.e., most people, when they think about the Panama Canal, they seem to forget there are many, many gates and locks inside it. You don't need, if you lose the outer edges, especially in the earlier periods, and the ship's taken, well, you get some troops ashore to take it. Oh, it's great. But if you have some people already sitting at the next gates, who get told the moment that it has been taken, we've been compromised, blow the gates, they blow the gates. And then you have no canal. So the canal is not a soft target. The canal is a target you can take out. It's not a target you can necessarily take easily. Oh, thank you. Someone's giving me a super chat. What happened to Force Z after Britain's Wales repulsor lost? What did the future Force Zs do in World War II? There weren't any really future Force Zs in World War II after that. Force Z doesn't really come up again. Force K comes up again, but not Force Z. They become part of ABDA command. Dr. Clarke, if the Iron were to steal a Virginia-class CGN, they'd be very, very happy, and take it to the Falkland Islands. Assuming they had enough Americans to crew and run the ship, and American denies involvement, what does the Iron do with it? Virginia-class CGN, that's going to sit with the picket line, probably anchor it. So either in the center or at one of the ends. Thank you, Thomas Vanderveld. Okay, I didn't know. 8829. Has the Royal Navy operated any nuclear-powered survey ships? Not to my memory, no. Right, let's see. What journals unintentionally had the better design attributes to help them fight and maybe survive World War I and World War II? HMS Tiger turns out to be better than she's supposed to be. Queen Elizabeths are quite good, mainly because they're armoured against underwater explosions to the extent they are, just because of mines. And, yeah. Miss Rowe, I only heard yes to my question, but if you read the question, I'll have a go at answering it. Apologies if the sound keeps going on and off. Sim Richards, would you have kept the Kitty Hawk as a museum ship? Yes. Now, Sharon, you were sent back to 1935. The Royal Navy has been given a 30 to 40% larger budget than they had in 1935, being placed in total command and control of all aspects of budget, ship design, construction, new technology sector. You'd be in this role until 1942 and you have all the future knowledge. What do you do? I fix the dual-purpose gun, and then I crank out a suitable destroyer. I upgrade all my C&D class cruisers. I do not build the King George V's in the 14-inch gun arrangement. They get built with 9 16-inch guns. And I probably order a whole bunch of sloops. And I'll order a whole bunch of fast tankers that can be converted into escort carriers as well. And I think I'll play around a little with the illustrious class design. But that's about it. Oh, order multiple unicorns. I won't have just one of those building. I'll have about 4 of them building. Possibly 6. What is considered the Royal Navy's very first built commissioned warship? That is a complicated question which will require an entire video to go through, because it depends on whether you consider a Royal ship to be a Royal Navy ship. Steve Clarke, Alex, the Admiralty sent Beatty instead of Clarke to the South Atlantic in 1914. Would anything have changed significantly in the post-World War I treaty era? Ooh. It's hard to see. It's hard to say because it also depends on what's happened at sea. Without Beatty in charge, you probably have someone who has a competent comms officer. In which case, or rather, when I say competent comms officer, has picked an officer who's good at communications and that's their actual training, not has the right familial connections for you to want them, and is not trained for the role. That's just wrong. So that could change quite a lot of battles in the Battle of World War One. Let's say, the German battlecruiser force gets wiped out at Dogger Bank, or severely damaged at Dogger Bank. Well, that's going to affect how they're going to operate in the Battle of Jutland. And if they get far more, if they've got a commander who's actually communicating properly at the Battle of Jutland with Jellicoe, then the odds are that Jellicoe gets to launch a far more competent attack. Jellicoe launches a far more competent attack and manages to not just cross the German T twice from instinct and judgment, but from actually having the right information, then you might well have a German defeat at Jutland. A big enough German defeat at Jutland could change the pace of World War One. Anything that changes the pace of World War One could change the impact of the treaties. Because it could change the economic situation, but it could also change the perception of the Navy. I.e., if the Navy has won the war by winning Jutland and winning Dogger Bank and winning all these great and glorious victories, and maybe landing troops, maybe forcing the Denmark Straits and going to the Baltic and cutting off German trade and ending the war, then the British government are going to be even less inclined to cut the Navy spending. Aren't they? Not at the moment, Nicolas. I don't think there are any plans currently to take a 155mm 20-tonish cannon and attach it to the deck of a modern frigate. Not a moment. Surgeon 90, did the British have the capacity to go off the carrier Vicente de Mea in 1982? Yes, they did. Actually, HMS Swiftsure was not that far away from her and had orders to engage at a similar point to Conqueror engaging the Belgrano, but she pulled back and was pulling back at full speed. And basically, it was decided you'd have to reveal your position completely by going fast enough to catch her up. But Vincendo de Meo could have well been sunk as well. If she carried on as she had been doing, she'd have probably been hit by Swiftsure, and then they'd have lost two. Or is it Splendid? It's one of the S-class boats, and she'd have been sunk. First one, does see if the Britain had decided to hold on to a piece or two of the USA from the Revolutionary War, other than Canada and Bermuda, what else would you want to keep? Using hindsight, not. I think New York and where else? Charleston, perhaps? Andres Gallardo Garcia. Hi, Dr. Clarke. Why did the Soviet Union take the Cicerones as unit of operation, not the Littorios? Because Britain and America wouldn't let them touch the Littorios. Nighthawk Productions. If Maltas were built, what issues might come from some being named after increasing their British influence control places, namely New Zealand and Africa? Does this mean their names might change during their careers, assuming they have a 30 to 40 year career? No, the names wouldn't get changed. The Royal Navy doesn't like to rename ships. It would just be there'll not be enough one after their ship named similarly. Thank you, Nighthawk Productions. Thank you, Paul MS. Maxim Middleton. How come Donitz wasn't able to convince Admiral Raeder to prioritize U-boat production over battleships before World War II? Because, frankly, there is no production of U-boats. A, you've got to get Goering and the 5-year plan on side. B, Hitler, kind of like Mussolini and every other dictator, has a minor pash on capital ships. And C, the Germans are trying to build a balanced fleet. And that's not a bad thing to do. Because if you had... This is what I try and tell people, I agree. If the Germans had just focused on building submarines, the Royal Navy would have gone, thank you, Lord. Because it would have made their preparations so much easier. They'd have just built anti-submarine warfare escorts. And they'd have just churned out sloops as fast as they could. And it basically being a case of the sloop Navy will deal with the North Atlantic and the North Sea. And the rest of the Navy will be able to focus on the Mediterranean and the Far East. And that would have made the Royal Navy's life a lot easier. Those capital ships are stupidly important for their numbers to the effects on the Royal Navy in terms of its operational capabilities in World War II. That's right. Could the Iron Duke class really have gotten 4 twin 4-inch 32 40mm pom-poms and 4 quadruple Vickers 50 anti-air machine guns if it was modernised in World War II, which World warships gave it? I don't see why not. I'd probably have said 6 twin 4-inch and slightly less on the 40mm pom-pom, but, you know... whatever way you want it. Next one. Could a hull from the 1955 Fordish still be usable today? If not, in frontline. If the military was something like testbed, if yes, which not? If not, would could contain them? So I made sure I made a super-proofed 10,000-ton cruiser in UD. Yeah, probably. Honestly, you could still use those ships. You'd want to upgrade them. You'd want VLS, etc. But yeah, if you had a decent-sized vessel, you could do it. And its hull was still in good nick, yeah. First one, what do you personally consider to be your first Royal Navy ship? That's an interesting question. I usually would usually go for the Trinity as being probably the first Royal Navy ship. Well, it's certainly the first royal ship that's of decent size enough to be remembered. But there is also Trinity Royal, the 1416, which is a good possibility. However, those are very, very old ships. And it's basically once you get to... Well, that's the thing. Once you start to get to the 50-gun ships, that's when you really have proper warships. And there is the Sun, which is a 5-gun pinnace, which was first ship to be recorded built at Chatham Dockyard. But I think airships built at Chatham definitely qualify as Royal Navy ships. But it's an interesting conversation to get into, let's say that. Nice area for one. I'm just going to say now I'm avoiding that question on Flight 655. I'm avoiding it. So, for instance, if the Royal Canadian Navy were to rebuild Haida today, how much larger would she have to be in order to be competent in the modern Navy? She's roughly 2,500 tons, so roughly 4.5 times her weight and displacement. To be equivalently competent. But guys, do you think the Tiacos will be the last USN class to have both bow and stern wing guns? I think they'll be the last double-enders, yes. How much trouble would it be to name a frigate HMS Port Stanley based in the Falklands? A lot of trouble, but, funds. 29-second stream delay. Ooch. Doc, out of all the guns, turrets in British military museums, which would you use as the basis to develop the gun or turrets for the Type 83? There are some very nice 15-inch 42 sitting at the Imperial War Museum. Let's start with those. Everything else I'll worry about later. Mr. Throne what was the largest technological hurdle for the early dreadnoughts? Rolling the steel, surprisingly enough. Rolling the sheer amount of steel and armoured steel they needed. Nighthawk Productions. Maltas, don't worry about the spam until you get these. We got modernised in 60s. What would they be out of defence of the armed be? And where would you place it? Where the 4.5s were? Probably to an extent where the 4.5s were, but I'd probably be adjusting the flight deck and the airflow space. As for defensive armament, I'd probably be looking at phalanxes and things like that. Maybe Seagram, maybe Seawolf. Let's hear it. Would an 18,000-ton guided missile cruiser have been a logical follow-on to a ship like the Tychos? It would certainly be a logical adjunct to as an actual cruiser. Matcha Doshla, who was the person with which they named most ships? It's going to sound strange, but I'm just checking it. I think. Because I always have to check which number he is. Louis XIV has had the most ships named after him of anyone. And they've served in both the French Navy and the Royal Navy and the Spanish Navy. Mainly because the British have captured so many. That was the ones that served in the French Navy and then had to reuse their names in the Royal Navy. Nick Ross, very low crewed frigates and naval drones. How do these naval assets do damage control? Usually by having redundancy, i.e. having different systems they can switch to. Wow, really? Only 10 to 12,000 tons from on hideout? Well, yes, they are a destroyer of that period. They're not. Today's destroyers are probably the first-rate escorts. In those times, the destroyers were the second-rate all-rounders. And the first-rate all-rounders were the cruisers. So there's a difference. No, I think Louis XIV has the most ships from the most navies as well, Mark Harkness. I know Prince Eugen of Savoy has Italy, Austria, and Germany, but Louis has France, UK, Spain, and the net Dutch, I think, as well. Which shows, hypothetical, Joseph Daniels now becomes US SecNav. US Navy allowed to upgrade standards and use 16 guns after Pennsylvania class. Potential knock-on effects? The Royal Navy is not going to sell for just Nelson and Rodney as their 16-inch ships. And the Japanese aren't going to either, so it's going to make it have an impact on the treaty. I'm not sure what level of impact though. Sorry, no, I mean from him to me at live. Based on Super Chat, they come in at the same time for me and him. And when I see it, it's 20 seconds before it pops up on the stream. And I'm at live, not late. Fives, 27 quid, 2.5. What is your best guess at the design of USN cruiser? Displacement, rough armors. Should they construct something to replace the Tico class? Should they actually go for a cruiser rather than a DGX to replace the Ticos? Then I'd hope they dust off the strike cruiser designs and start off with them. No, that wouldn't make her lighter than the Type 31s rolling off the line now. Type 31s are not 12,000 tons. Believe it or not, I'm talking 10 to 12,000 tons in standard, not fully loaded. Actually, how daft is it that the Philippine Navy gets free 18,000-ton guided missile cruisers need a crew of 466 to run? Crew are cheaper in the Philippines than they are in the UK and the US. So it's not particularly insane. John Sykes, based on current USN ship construction plans, what are the plans for current carrier group escorts? Probably it's going to be a sea of Burks. Now, sorry, what would a British nuclear-powered guided missile cruiser be designed to be like? If it was current generation, it would be, imagine something like the Type 45s, but bigger. And if it's previous generation, go with the Type 82s, but bigger. That's right. What would it make? What made it so easy to swap the single 4-inch 45 caliber Mark 5 sort of twin 4-inch 45 caliber Mark 16s? Weight and the fact that they neither weighed particularly a lot of weight. See, Richards, was the tech on the ferry again any good for airborne early warning to Falklands and for 82? It could have done it perfectly happily. Because, let me let you into a dirty little secret. The tech for the AEW Gannet, they basically rip off a Gannet and stick onto a Sea King and call it the Sea King AEW aircraft. So, yes, that's what the Sea King were providing, the same tech, broadly speaking. Fives 27 Queen 2.5. Having seen a documentary on the Queen Elizabeth class, I found myself finding it incredibly susceptible to battle damage due to its unarmoured high voltage cables. You sure they're unarmoured, or they're just not in an armoured box? There's a difference. And lack of backup equipment and low crew. It has a lot of backup equipment, a lot of redundancy built into Queen Elizabeth class design. I'm not going to go into it. Again, it's a modern ship, and I don't go into the details. Low crew numbers, I do agree, but that's compared to the USN model for these sort of things. The British and British and European nations have a different policy on it. And I'd say she has quite a lot of automated damage control measures. So, yes, low crew, but the damage control, there's a lot more automated systems on her than there are on her equivalent US ship. Nighthawk Productions. Jackie Fisher plans to fight Air for Fight War and was blockade the North Sea, invade the Jutland Peninsula, and then wage war in the Baltic. Some who still say this could have won the war by 1916. What are your thoughts that we've gotten this route? Could this have ended World War I by 1916? It could have done, but it would have cost. You are going to do none of these operations cheaply. And you have to remember, British politicians are kind of like Hitler in World War II. British politicians in World War I are kind of like Hitler in World War II. They do not like losing anything. They're risk averse to anything. They want to have all victories and no losses. Language, Ninja. Language. We say frigating on this channel. How's your super chat been, Ninja? I haven't seen your super chat, I think. Ah, now I got it. Morning, Dr. Clarke. Hypothetical. A long-range recon flight spots a Keto battalion at last light on 6th. IJN doesn't notice. What happens next? USN probably sends up another reconnaissance flight to confirm. They probably change the alert pattern and dispersal of aircraft because now the attack... You see, they're based on the idea that their attack is going to be an attack by terrorists. The moment they get realization that Japanese carriers are that close, they're going to disperse for other options. You probably have at dawn maximum fighters airborne. They go on to full alert. They wouldn't launch a night strike because let's be honest, the US Navy and the US Army Air Force are not set up to do night strikes. And before you ask, I've got my laptop here. So they wouldn't be doing that, but they'd do have everything ready at dawn. And basically, the Japanese would arrive to a trap. Probably lose a lot of aircraft with the amount of fighters they have in the air. I think I have seen it, John Sykes, but I think it's in my pile of things to read after this week at some point, because I've got time this week. I'm taking some time off this week to actually read emails and things. I've got a few days scheduled for peace to read. I still think probably Louis XIV wins it over Prince Eugen. I know he's done a lot, but I think Louis XIV's ones win because Louis XIV just has so many of them. Son of Erica, Dr. Clarke, why did H.S. Glamorgan cope better with the next set than either Sheffield or Coventry, especially given that Glamorgan was much older? Possibly because she was older, so she was tended to be built of thicker steel. Also, where she was hit manoeuvring and managed to get hit in the hangar space. And so that's above the main deck, and there's a lot of firefighting capabilities around that area, and it's also far away from stuff which is critical. While there is aviation fuel, etc., which can burn, which does create a nasty fire, it's not going to cause the same amount of trouble as where the others were hit. So it's okay. Sorry, little cousin. Nicara, so basically a repairable non-fatal hull breach leak needs repair, turns low crewed frigates and drones into submersibles. Not really, but it does give them issues and does tend to mean them having to return to dock. So Ninja, apologies for language, unaware of rules. It's not really such rules, it's just I have lots of my little cousins tend to watch. So this is the thing, to, stop me getting killed. Lots of little cousins watch. Do any of some plans for a nuclear power substitute and not carrier? Other than it's just the Russians who have at the moment. At the moment, just the Russians. The Russians have a reason to keep them going because the Russians have their nuclear-powered icebreaker project as well as their nuclear-powered warship project. So those two systems sort of play off each other. And they don't actually have a nuclear-powered carrier. Dear guy, I noticed the nuclear versions of the Leahy and Belknap class have less listed shaft horsepower than the conventional versions. By as much as 15 to 20,000. How does this happen? That's the official figures. Dear guy, that's the official figures. He is the assistant fluffy research assistant now. He's no longer the trainee assistant fluffy research assistant. He's gone from Tafra to Afra. And probably when the fluffy research assistant becomes the SFRA, i.e. the senior fluffy research assistant, we will promote Zebedee to the fluffy research assistant. So about 2 to 3 years of good behaviour and good work. We'll have to see whether what his quality of his journal articles really are. That's the really important thing. Did they get enough bark return? Mitch notes, Fisher's idea for a Baltic campaign ended up being Gallipoli Part 2. It would have been conducted prior to Gallipoli, so it would have been Baltic would have been Part 1, Gallipoli would have been Baltic Part 2. CV1, Alex, the RN World War II T-class submarine sent some casemate torps switch from forces of rear firing. How did this affect the balance in the boat? It was managed to be managed, the balance in the boat. They did do some tapering in the hull and some distribution of other things to manage it out. But it gave them some of the extra advantages. It made them more general purpose rather than ambush predators. Mr. Randy's End, what is your ideal ship for trade protection in low threat areas of World War II? Probably a Black Swan class sloop or a Hunt class escort destroyer. The USN doesn't build the low-level escorts that the British really churns out in numbers, so that's why I've gone British ships on that one. But guys, if the USN built a new nuclear surface combatant, would you choose one Ford reactor or 2 Virginia reactors to power it? I go a Ford reactor because, in the nicest way, Virginias are underwater reactors. They're designed for submarines, and there's a difference between being a surface reactor and an underwater reactor in how you design it and how it deals with the world around it and what it tends to run off. Plus, it's going to be easier for maintenance on a surface ship. Sorry. My Highness, Kaylee spotted on the defense December 6th. Kilo battalion spotted on Defender December 6th. One thing certain, US battleships not sitting with all hatches open for Admiral's inspection. No, they wouldn't be. Directions. If we had carrier-based E-2 Hawkeyes and Phantoms to Falklands War, could the super retards that attacked the Central Airfield Atlantic of Air have been intercepted prior to launching direct sets? They were intercepted long before they launched direct sets. It would have been a lot further away they would have been intercepted. Sidra 90, do you think Britain would ever build a nuclear-powered surface ship? We have the technological capacity to. Please note that Britain has technological capacity to do so. It's down to political will and the actual funding being allocated to it. So it's a case of, there is scenarios I can see where it would happen, but it depends on those things coming through. Is there a topic for today's discussion? No, today's is just a chat, because, well, it's a Sunday, and I chat with all of you on a Sunday. Even if I'm also at the same time watching Peekaboo being played by a poodle. And small things. Go on, Cameron. It's the Great Dispersion. You are put in charge of the UK equivalent of the New Deal programme. With future knowledge that naval and other infrastructure do you upgrade to build for World War II and today? Escape depression. Oh, I build dry docks and I build probably quite large facilities at places like Liverpool. I'd also build more infrastructure. And I'd be tempted to build a railway line to Ireland. Because if I could have a railway line to Ireland, that would make things interesting. Northern Ireland, of course, but, you know, a railway line would make things interesting. I'd certainly build in a lot of railway lines and a lot of canals. I'd be tempted to build a canal across the UK, across the neck of the UK, if I could. It'd require a lot of work to get it through some parts of the UK on the route, but it's not impossible. That's like, how do the world react to a nuclear battery-powered frigate? They probably wonder why you'd suck so much power in a frigate. That's right. Do we know what the File 6 Ohio class SSBN were going to be? Not really off the top of my head. Both reactors run on the same fuel. The Ford reactor, though, is significantly more powerful. There are differences. I think the new Virginia reactors are like with ship reactors that don't need refueling. I don't know if the Ford reactor is that as well. So you might need expensive refueling. It's easier on a surface ship. Again, there is a reason you go for the expensive reactor you do for a submarine, because it's built in a pressure hull and all sorts of things. but you don't need to worry about that so much on a surface ship. And the ones on Ford, etc., are still through life designs. However, it's not just to do with the reactor itself, its internal chemistry and its makeup. It's to do with its layout. If you think about it, a nuclear submarine reactor has to be built to go in a very confined space in a pressure hull and deal with the circumstances of operating under the water and the realities of that. You're not operating under the water, so you don't have that amount of radiation shielding around you, starters. So you build it differently, but also you lay it out differently. It's a different layout than it is. The same things go in the same order, right, in the chain, but they're laid out differently on a surface ship than they are in a submarine because you have more space. So it's a sort of different system. Plus, let's be honest, if you are going for a nuclear reactor on a surface ship, you want as much power as you can get, because that will enable you to operate rail guns and lasers. Have you know what HMS Alliance and your thoughts on that? I can't remember on that one. Not off the top of my head at the moment. I don't think I have been. I don't know. Depends which one is Alliance. I think I have been on an A-boat. I think, maybe not a nuclear energy. I think the USN once calculated that replacing the Allen 2500s with an equal footprint reactor could be cheaper and just as powerful in modern tech. But besides the initial cost, is there any downside to building a modern nuclear powered escort with unit reactors that now last a lifetime of a ship or submarine? It's literally the cost. It's the cost, and it's the training of the crews. The fact is, your engine technicians on your conventionally powered destroyers and frigates are not being offered stupid money to go and work in the civilian sector, but your naval reactor personnel are offered all sorts of incentives to not sign up again for another tour of duty with you and go to a civilian reactor, work in the civilian field. Nicole Ross, when uncrewed naval ship is abandoned and it's up to salvage according to my understanding of the law, as supplied to drones, they're not considered abandoned. They might be uncrewed, but they're not abandoned. And there is an interesting debate on that, which is going on, which is why I do say that I think most modern merchant ships will become optionally crewed, with people just aboard as security more than anything else. Scheduled gap. If angled flight decks of the carriers had been developed earlier, would it have been worth the cost of Model 2 in terms of planes and personal loss and landing distance? Not really, because it's going to sound strange. They've not got the high enough landing speeds to justify it. You lose people in those landing accidents not because of their speed of landing, it's because of the angle of the damage the aircraft has already sustained when it's landing. The angled flight deck comes in as the speed of landing grows, and as they're landing at higher and higher speeds. It makes sense. Mark Magnus, in the Quasi-War of 1799, was there any British note to one of the new US frigates beating up the French frigates two times, or was it, well, they were French? Not really. Not really. Naturality. Subreactors are more of a continuous level of power output generators. Surface units need one that can quickly generate power at varying levels at any possible time. Sujin 90. Given the rise of the People's Liberation Army Navy, do you think the West will build more SSGNs? I mean, beyond a normal SSN with subhuman. I think it'd be sensible, but I don't think they're going to do it anytime soon. Bulgarian, do you think Australia will get SSNs or B-21s? They're more likely to get SSNs than they are B-21s. Just one hypothetical. Drac misspoke on his what-if Battle of Texel. Did he? And the misspoke, he had a damaged high seas fleet, Derflinger's ship, run aground on a hostile, i.e. Dutch beach. What would the fallout be? Would they jump into war for ISIS and booty, or let it slide to keep a neutral position? They'd probably impound it under their own new rules of neutrality. They fiercely protective of their neutrality, and if nice way if it's grounded on their beach, they'd impound it. They might set the crew free in Germany, but they'd impound the ship. Didn't they stop railgun research? No, they pass it back to DARPA because it's not ready yet, and the trouble is power generation, really. I know that later research is a thing because people have been going to Department of Defense since before World War I, death ray suggestions. Yeah, but most of that, but railguns will be handed back to DARPA to an extent. SPRN Ninja. With Pacific tensions rising, do you think that New Zealand will ever see sense and realise they need a more capable navy before anything happens? We're doomed to run the Anzac class until the end of time. I'm pretty much sure that if the New Zealand Navy goes anywhere, they'll end up buying some Type 31s at some point. Mitchellites, I went to boot camp in July 1977. I didn't complete all the nuclear power training and report to my first boat until March 1979, and I had the short version being machinist mate, i.e. mechanic. Yep. Right, I'm going to go get my last can of Iron Brew before, if I want any more, I have to go find other people. Is that the destroyer in the background? No, that's the fire. Empty. Am I right in presuming that the USA would never allow a rival to have control over OPEC? The Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, I presume. And, well, technically, yes, Russia, I think, is a member. I don't know if America is a member, from memory. Let me just check. Membership of OPEC. Let's see. Members are Algeria, Angola, Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Gabon, Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, Libya, Nigeria, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and Venezuela. In the nicest way, I don't think there's anyone in there who's exact. There's some people who are definitely more friendly with America than others, but there are others in there who are definitely not friendly. So, I was thinking more about planes missing the arresting wires or crashing in planes parked on deck. Would avoiding this seem like justification for angled decks? Well, that's why they had nets. So for the plane to actually hit the other aircraft parked on deck, they would have to not only skip the cables, they would have to go through the net. And often you had more than one net placed up. So it's unlikely for that to be that to happen. And the angled deck, if you're in that sort of scenario, the angled deck might not solve that problem. First, I do believe you're referring to the sounding gun going from the background, a small 45er, I believe. I have no idea what's going on in the rest of the properties. I'll go hunting once I've... You're a very good guard dog, I have to admit that. You are good. You notice no one at all, but you're good. Yes. You need a pat for all that not working. That's 27 quintuple 5, or quintuple, that's quintuple 5. Do you believe that the Washington and London treaties caused the irreparable decline of shipbuilding due to treaty limits? I think they did cause a decline of shipbuilding due to lack of construction, yes. Steve Clarke, also regarding the earlier question of December 6, 1941, could the US have sent a message to the carriers for them to attack the Japanese assholes whilst their aircraft were over Hawaii? I don't know if they're in position to do so because of where they're steaming in from. I remember they've been steaming out with supplies to places, so they're not really fully loaded. They might be able to arrange something, but just knowing your enemy's there doesn't mean you know they're going to attack you. You know they're there. You can prepare to be attacked, but you're not sure if they are going to attack you. You need to keep scouts and you need a scout watching them, basically. Well, France certainly kicked some more life in their land nuclear power program, as well as Poland actually starting. There's a lot of people getting involved in it now. My coach, the Royal Navy used the 4.5 Mark 6 for ages. Was that because it was such a good gun, and so made it so? What made it so? Was it because they couldn't afford to develop a new gun? it was a really reliable gun and everything they kept developing wasn't enough of an improvement to actually warrant the expense of changing it. That's the problem. Interesting. Jets want to land with the power on as the engines spool up slowly, so applying power after bolting isn't going to get you out of the drink. True. Net does the wreck of the plane, however, yes, but it stops the wrecking other aircraft. The whole United States CVA-58 flight deck system would require a long, long time to get into. So let's put it this way. I will happily have a go at that, but it will be a whole video on it. Probably on routes of the Cold War not taken. Actually, I'm surprised. All the Cold War videos have been doing lately. No one suggests that as one of the technology videos. Dear guys, so does it make sense for a future nuclear submarine, a surface ship, to have a direct electric drive, or still use the steam turbine for motive power, but steam generation for electric? Ooh. That's going to depend upon a lot of factors, especially the efficiency factor, which allows you to get the most out of every single point of it. And especially it's going to be the whole system overall. Nicholas, are there any plans that you know of by interest or any other competent navy to mitigate the disaster of 200,000 ton plus tanker being sunk? Lots of navies have plans. Whether or not they'd work is a completely different matter. Lots of navies have plans, though. I'm just checking the questions on on the phone as well. Good lord. I think I had a few questions. By the time CV-858 would have finished, HMS Victoria would have finished refit. It would have been interesting to see what would happen then. Do you think the West is right going for supersonic but low observable anti-ship missiles? I think that's the way they've picked to go at the moment, but I think also it's one of the things you have to remember is that there's a lot of technology still being invested and there's a lot of investment still being invested in engines. So you develop the low technical observable systems, and then later on you can upgrade them to the very fast low observable systems if you want to, or other systems which can go very fast and then go low observable, or systems which can go low observable and then go into terminal very, very fast. I think, Stafford, in answer to your question, that was my mum, because both my mum and sister have had asthma attacks recently. Their asthmas have crashed. You are right, it could be one or the other. It could be either one, but both of them specifically have issues on their own, so I think it's one of those two. They don't have the dreaded lurgy, their asthma is crashing. There's a difference. It can sound similar, but it's not the same. Right. Enterprise was the closest carrier, and it had just started to return from ferrying 12 Ground on 4-3 Wildcats Wake Island. Yeah, it's not that close, basically, when Pars attacked. Alright, as I've caught up, I'm going to try and use the phone screen, because then I can look at you all, instead of being weirdly round while I'm finishing off, because hang on to this. Oosh, I'm sorry about your second run of COVID, Scooter. Good nurses in this family. As a rule, they really do care about their patients and are not at all motivated by biscuit consumption. Not at all motivated by biscuit consumption. Michelites, on our Sunmots, they basically went with gas turbines, turbo-electric drive, integrated electrical plant due to demands of the older Targaryen still being noses. Yes, and pretty much they've copied the engine system for the new DGX. But, that sonorous voice, of course, from my sister. Now, the DGX, of course, has basically gone with a very conventional style hull, having the Zumwalt's power plant stuck in it. They're fun. Hello. You saying hello to everyone? Yes, he's checking on me, as you know. The others are being checked on by the assistant Fluffy Research Assistant. So the Fluffy Research Assistant is checking me. So how much did the US have to watch what the RN is up to? Oh, the US are always watching what the RN is up to, because the RN tend to be pretty devious as a whole. The disease have batteries for demand peaks and spikes. They were looking at those various systems. Yeah, we're all sort of disappointed with the hull they chose for the DGX, because they already had a hull for the Zumwalt, so they could have gone with that hull, but they decided to go with the hull they have done, because they reckon it's easier and quicker to build. And let's be honest, you can understand them wanting to save money when they're building them as they're building. Is there a replacement for ASRock doesn't work? Well, there is a more advanced version of ASRock, which is already in service, and I'm hoping there's going to be a success to that. But the trouble is, ASRock is one of those things which is easy to overlook, because it's just been there, and it doesn't get the same attention as standard missiles. H1, the DGX also interests me because it looks like they've just gone Queen Anne's Mansion superstructure. It's certainly got something interesting there. Certainly something interesting going on there. Are Fluffy Research Assistants tax deductible? I have had a conversation with my accountant about this, and she has assured me they're not. But, oh well. Because I tried to say they were dependents, and also that they were being employed. And neither of which apparently holds up in the eyes of the tax authorities in the United Kingdom. The idea that I employed this thing for its research skills apparently will not wash with Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs. Well, His Majesty's Revenue and Customs, I suppose, now. So what did the USN learn from this mandatory construction of HMS Victorious? Not to do it. Not to try and do that to the same sort of thing to the midways. So they went very differently when they did the midways. Yeah. Oh, good lord. Me. Do you mind not leaping into my lap like that? Most dogs, when they leap into your lap, come forwards, not sideways at you. Hello, Hatchery Vanguard. If you want to say the FRA is employed and you need to pay the national insurance. Yeah, but he doesn't get national insurance. Besides, he gets literally paid in biscuits. How's that going to work out in national insurance? I'm not sure if the NHS runs off biscuits. Cars, local on the LCS actually proved to be actually very expensive. There's almost the same problems, i.e. digging in public record and operation the cost. Not really. It's almost actually proved to be quite okay on crew and requirements. Would core guns be better than railguns, despite the more complicated technology due to limited shots as a railgun was due to degradation of rails? Yes and no. There are lots of options. We often talk about the railguns, and people go, railguns, degradation was due to the rails, okay? Please note, the rails they're talking about were produced with a metallurgy which was already 15 years old when they was produced. So they weren't really the best we could produce by a long shot. They were supposed to be the experimental test beds before they put in the real ones, and then they tried to do the full real testing of them, and they wore out too quickly. And this was noted by everyone, but it's one of those figures used because it's basically railguns turned out to be more expensive, especially in terms of power consumption, than people were thinking about it was going to be. And so you wanted to blame it on something, not that you couldn't prevent, rather than something you could prevent. And so claiming the rails were running out too quickly was far easier than saying, well, we realised that we were going to need more in terms of battery power and power generation than we had allocated, because it turned out to be just as power intensive as we thought it was going to be, and therefore we were stupid and we've mucked up. Or you go, well, this part of the system keeps wearing out far quicker than it's supposed to do so, and therefore not mentioning the fact that you're using the experimental, not the... Yeah. How about declaring Raleigh as an emotional support animal? I'm tempted to get that. Thank you, Ruhan. I'm glad I make a good driving companion. So, Janine, I have a book that talks about the sea cat. It's pretty amazing the Ireland kept it as long as they did. Both was approved in all use on the Falklands. Possibly, but it was what they had. I can confirm, unfortunately, FUPs can't be employed, and if the doctor did, he'd have to pay the corporation tax, income, and national insurance tax. Pretty sure the NHS runs off tea and biscuits given to Britain, though. Potentially. Yes and no. Let's be honest, the hull cracks on the LCS. The interesting thing is the Triton versus the LCS, and the Triton, of course, was a test bed. And that proved different. And there are lots of other vessels in service which are tri-hulls, which are being still kept in service and are very good. There seems to be something going on with the LCS, though. So, Johnson, given the shortage in personnel, will the USN eventually go with the RM manning system and heavy automation? I think they probably will have to at some point, but they're going to push it off as long as they can. What is your opinion on naval guns with liquid propellants? I don't like the idea of liquid propellants, mainly because they can go liquidy and can flow places. I like propellants which I can keep track of and I can keep where they're supposed to be. 527 quintuple 5. Do you believe the Alaska class hull will be suitable for building a modern cruiser or guided cruise leader? Yes. Yeah, it would be actually. It's a fairly decent hull. Last the Iron Brew. What is poodle weight? Not that heavy. Yes, right. Wanted to blame it on something other than people who said you do understand this is going to use stupid amounts of power. Yep. That's right. If the Iron got refit Victorious and two refit Implacables, where do they use them? That's an interesting question. Where do they use them? Probably they're part of the British force which is monitoring the North Atlantic. Possibly also them entering the Far East. Did any chocolate make it to libraries or archives? Nope. Any plans to return to Canada, CJ90? Yes. Not this year, probably, but maybe 2024. Nice. In an ideal world, would Sea Cat and Sea Clarke have been withdrawn by 1970? Well, honestly, I'd have preferred them to be withdrawn by about 1950, but we'll leave that to one side. I do admit that that's the date withdrawing them before they actually come into service, but I just feel that would have made the world a safer place for those people who had to use them. And Brew's gone. Right. I will finish lots of questions. I say thank you very much to all of you. And, well, I hope you've had a nice time. Oh, good Lord. Well, the bots are always going to turn them at some point. And for that, I definitely need to go back in this system. Michael, if the Royal Navy was to launch HMS Dr. Clarke, what type of ship best personifies you? Frigate, OPV, research or survey vessel? Oh, good Lord. I'd prefer not a research or survey vessel, because honestly, that's not my style. An OPV can have a lot of fun, but I tend to be slightly more heavy going than a presence vessel in terms of that, so probably got to be a frigate, and probably got to be a fairly hefty frigate, or if not a hefty frigate, then maybe a destroyer. But guys, do you think Lee was right not going for a night fight with the Japanese in Battlefield Philippine Sea? Yes, because what's the point? What's he going to gain by doing all that risk? Calm Gunsmith. In an ideal world, City Cat Sam would have been superseded by the supersonic cat of the same size. Ooh, that could have been useful. Take care, Mr. Serendi's End. Thank you very much. O2. Thank you, CJ90. I'll look forward to seeing you there. Thank you, Actress Ford. Glad to see you survived Amma tonight. Would it make sense to go for the RN to go Sea Dart, Sea Wolf, and Lightweight Sea Wolf going into the 1980s? That would certainly make life a lot easier. Let's see, Clarke. Why didn't more nations see the potential in torpedoes larger than 21-inch in World War II, like the 24-inch in Nelson's? Expense. It's, as always, it's expense. Thank you, Jack Ray. Thank you, John Shea. Thank you, DG40. Thank you, H. Verdun. Comes HSN, a tender for many uncrewed craft over under an old surface. That can be fun. Adapted LPD, perhaps. Destroyer. Yeah, that would be that's kind of my ego talking there if I say destroyer. Are there any leaders left as museum ships? Destroyer leaders. Well, there's Haida is technically a destroyer leader because she's a tribal destroyer, which were technically super destroyers, which were technically destroyer leaders. There's a few vessels around which fit that category. There's a C-class cruiser in Northern Ireland, Caroline. I think if the Argentines were facing Seawolf, Lightweight Seawolf, and a CS, they're in trouble because they never faced Seawolf before, and Lightweight Seawolf uses the Sea-Cat mounts. It would have certainly made things more interesting. Anyway, take care, HS Verdun. Thank you, DG40, John Shea. Thank you, 9681. Thank you, Carl Gesberg. Thank you, Stafford and Jack and all the other admins this evening. Thank you, everyone, for your support. And I had better get going because I think I need to go and sort some things out. Thank you very much, everyone. Take care and, well, have fun. I'm not sure how long this video is going to be in the end. What are the names of the Fluffy Research Assistants? Happy New Year, everyone, from my mum, who's you've heard in the background coughing. We have Raleigh and we have Zebedee. The Fluffy Research Assistant is Raleigh. The assistant Fluffy Research Assistant is Zebedee. But usually I just call them Big Fluff and Mighty Fluff. If you had to pull a Vanguard, recycle cavalry ship guns and turrets on a new hull, which ships and guns would you use for donor, and what would ship type mission new hull? I would have tried to. It depends where I'm going to do it, but if I'm going to do it in the if I'm going to do it after World War II, I would take Nelson and Rodney's guns, 16-inch guns, and I would adapt them. Take care, Steve Clarke. Thank you, Poaxi. Thank you, Nook. Thank you, everyone. Take care. The corgi being Big Fluff. The corgi's Mighty Fluff. Take care, Ian. Take care, everyone. Thank you very much for watching, and hope you enjoyed. Toodles.